gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 260. Woo! Our 5-year anniversary. Woo! As I punched my microphone. Sorry. Was that loud?
No, it was fine. It's fine. It's fine. Pablo can totally take care of it.
As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
I am 5 years older than when we started this show.
Oh my. I realized, for some reason, I feel like you're like way older than me. You're not. You're like 4.5 years older than me. Yeah, it's like not that much.
Right.
Which is only a significant divide if you're like 10.
Right.
And the other day, I realized that I'm older now than you were when we started the show, and I felt extremely old.
Yeah. Not only that, but you started calling me Resident Old Bastard before we started the show on the other show. So
you were in your 20s.
Oh, yeah. I was in my 20s then. So yeah, think about that, old man.
Half a decade. Anyway, we have housekeeping. It's just timestamps. If you want to jump to the topic, there's a timestamp.
I like that you've been doing that particular housekeeping so long that you're just like, it's just the timestamps.
They're always there when I remember to put them up. Oh, did I remember to put them up last week? Oh, crap. I don't know. I'll check it later. My week. It's the second show of the night, okay? It's a little loosey-goosey. We're off. It's going to be fine, everybody.
Yeah, it's fine. We got this.
Everyone calm down. I've been getting into Pico 8.
Yes.
Which I didn't even know was a thing. It is, how do they describe it? It is a fantasy computer system.
Yeah, it's a fantasy microcomputer.
It's basically a little mini computer platform, an 8-bit computer platform that you boot up the same way you would like an emulator for an old computer. And it starts you at a command prompt, and it has this program called Splore, and you can just explore huge amounts of little mini 8-bit games that people have programmed, and they're all free. None of them cost any money.
Right.
And you can open them and play them and then hit a button and go straight to edit the code and edit sprites and things, and it has just been a blast. It was in the itch bundle, the racial justice and equality bundle that everyone's still going on about. Right. It should be, because it was like 1,700 games.
Yeah.
And I actually took an old Raspberry Pi I had lying around and made it a dedicated Pico 8 console.
Nice.
And then, because I'm insane, paired one of my Switch NES controllers to it and gave it its own monitor and keyboard and mouse. And it's like this little mini Pico 8 console that I have now that I play Pico 8 games on. And it's just been a lot of fun. Nice. And there are a lot of demakes. There's a really good Tetris port, Paneled Upon, Mr. Driller, Celeste is on there.
Well, that's the original version of Celeste.
Yeah, pardon me. And there's just like demakes of tons and tons and tons of games, and I love demakes.
Yeah.
They're great.
My first exposure to Pico 8 was in Celeste, because in Celeste there's a hidden area you can find where there's a Pico 8 computer just chilling there, and when you turn it on, you get to play that original version of Celeste from Pico 8. And I thought that it was just some neat little 8-bit demake that they included in the game, until I did the research on it and discovered that, no, this is a whole environment.
Platform.
And there are tons of games available for it. So I was really stoked to get a chance to mess around with that.
Because Celeste is kind of the poster child for Pico 8, and there are, by the way, lots of different like mini fantasy computer systems out there. I forget the names of all of the rest of them, but there are other ones.
You should know the names of all of the rest of them.
It's my job, right? I had one job. Because Celeste is kind of the poster child, there are a lot of different versions of it.
Right.
And my favorite one is Celeste X, where you are Mega Man X in Celeste, and you have your little gun, and it's just dumb and cute. I love it. And I will say, Tetris on there is it's a really good version of Tetris.
Nice.
My daughter's been playing it. I found a game with a monkey, and she was playing that, and she eats bananas, and then I showed her that she can go edit the sprite, so she was thrilled to go edit her sprite and change the monkey to a pink square. And that was the funniest thing in the world. And then she wanted me to turn it back into a monkey, and I was like, oh, well, I don't remember what the sprite looked like, so I tried to draw a monkey. I got in trouble. I got yelled at for drawing a bad monkey. But it's really great. If you have the itch bundle, you have Pico 8, go download it. It's a blast.
Okay.
If you don't, still go download it because it's still a blast. I've just been
Isn't
having
there
a lot of
like
fun with it.
a fake Star Fox in there too in that bundle?
There is. I've played that. It's actually I've not gotten very a lot of them. What I've noticed is they're demakes of games, but it's just like the first level or the first 10 minutes, or like there's Cave Story, but it's just the opening cave sequence. There's the Star Fox thing, like it is straight up Star Fox and it looks and plays like Star Fox.
Nice.
But it's just, I think it's just the first level. And
Right.
but for something that's free that you're just goofing off with, jumping in and out of games, it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
It really evokes a lot of like downloading random DOS games when
Yeah.
I was a kid,
Right.
kind of feel. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
I've also been playing 2 games on my DS Lite because it has 2 game slots and I have to fill them both at all times. It's the law.
It's necessary.
I've been playing Bowser's Inside Story,
Yeah.
which I picked up years ago for like really cheap.
Is this the you said this is in your DS Lite, right?
My DS Lite,
So
yes.
not the 3DS remake.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's I'm trying to enjoy it. I'm having a hard time enjoying it. I get very frustrated at the basically rhythm game combat. It wears on me a little bit, and I'm trying to acclimate to it because the story.
You're talking
is
about
just,
the timed hits, right?
Yeah, the timed hits.
Yeah.
Because I don't mind games that are like, oh, it's turn-based combat, but if you press this button at the right time, you do more damage. That's fine. Right. But in this particular game, and most of the Mario and Luigi games that I've played, it's more like, oh, if you don't hit the button at the right time, you do almost no damage.
Right. Which was the basically all of the Mario RPGs have kind of gone down that hill because the original Mario RPG on Super NES, it really was excess a bonus that you would get for timing your hits correctly. Yeah. And in Paper Mario, with some attacks, it was a bonus, and in other attacks, if you timed it incorrectly, you did practically no damage. Right. And by the time they got to Mario and Luigi, it felt like it was a requirement to time things correctly, or you were playing the game on hard mode.
And it became very frustrating because now all of a sudden I can't grind.
Right.
And I like my combat to be engaging, but sometimes I also need to grind out some battles because I'm just trying to get across this dumb map to get to this thingamajig, and I'm tired of it. And I've also been playing Final Fantasy 1 and 2, Dawn of Souls.
Nice.
Restarting the first Final Fantasy in that bundle. I did fire up Final Fantasy 2 because this is not my original cartridge. This is one I rebought when I bought my now DS Lite in the Wii era at some point.
I just realized what story you're about to tell.
And I was like, I don't play Final Fantasy 2 in that because I don't love the game. Yeah. And I was like, I wonder if there's a save in it from before I owned the game because I've deleted all the saves out of Final Fantasy 1 in this because I play Final Fantasy 1 and the Dawn of Souls port of FF1 is great and I love it and I recommend it. And so I fire up Final Fantasy 2 and there's one save of a party comprised of 3 characters named Mario, Fardo, and Man.
And Maria is the one named Man, of course.
Yeah. So
I believe if I remember right, Frionel was Farto, Guy was Mario, and Maria was Man. And the way it was listed out on your screen, it just said Farto Mario Man.
So I'm imagining that was a young child. I hope it was. Or me when I was drunk one day and I was like, I'm going to play Final Fantasy 2. And then I did that.
I just imagine some dude in his like late 40s turning to his wife and being like, I named this one Fardo.
And she's like, I want a divorce. We might be off the rails. They're good games. I've been playing them.
Yeah.
The story in Bowser's Inside Story is just too funny and cute, and you get to play Bowser, and I like that. I'm trying to tough it out.
Yeah, I have the 3DS remake. I keep meaning to get to it, but I have not started it yet.
I just like Bowser. I'm a little offended that there's not more games starring Bowser where you get to be Bowser.
Yeah.
Princess Peach got her whole own game. So did Wario's gotten like 100 games.
Bowser was playable both in Super Mario RPG and in Super Paper Mario.
Yeah,
Those
but
are
I
both
want
solid
one where
games.
I want like a platformer where I can
That's
be
fair.
Bowser.
Super Paper Mario has platform segments.
Yeah, but it's kind of not like Mario. I don't know.
No.
You know what I mean.
I hear you.
Anyway, that's what I've been up to.
Right. I've been up to pretty much nothing.
All right, then.
I
Great.
wish I had more things to say, but I don't. I was staring at my Vita the other day, thinking, what game could I play on this? And now that you've said all that, I'm thinking about downloading the PSP version of FF1 on there, because I would say it is slightly better than the GBA version in a couple of ways. But
How very dare you?
But I know that you hate the graphics or the art style in it, so.
Oh, does it have that weird kind of cell phony, cell shaded looking thing?
Yeah, kind of. It's more polished than a cell phone game, but it definitely has that art style.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the news. First up, EA announces the return of the Skate franchise eventually in some way, we guess.
I never
They didn't
played
say
any of these.
anything.
This was past the time that I remember of retro gaming, so I know nothing about this franchise.
They were not Tony Hawk games, so I did not play them. I was offended that they would release a skateboarding video game that did not have Tony Hawk.
Yeah,
so I didn't play them either.
I don't even know what platforms those were on, to be honest.
This was 360 era.
Oh, okay.
It was 360
It's still
and
fairly
forward,
modern.
I believe.
Okay.
But a lot of people are excited about it. So good. So you get Skate and Tony Hawk coming back
Right,
this
there you
year.
go.
So Tony Hawk never left. They just started making really bad games.
I'm just waiting for SSX to make a comeback. That'd be great.
Yeah, there's not been any. Well, there was that one snowboarding game. What was it? I want to say it was called Powder, but that's that sad movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
Fuck, what was it called? It
don't
might
know.
have been called Powder, but I don't think it was about an albino man. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Smash reveals ARMS DLC character and Fallout's Vault Boy as Mii Fighter costume.
That would have never, ever, ever come up on my list of things I would expect to see in Smash Brothers.
Yup.
That was the biggest surprise for me.
Amiibo for Persona 5's Joker and Dragon Quest XI's Hero also officially confirmed.
Yeah, I don't want to buy Amiibo, but it is a Dragon Quest Amiibo.
You don't have to, Saturn.
I don't understand you. What
You
does that
don't.
mean?
I've reached a point where I'm like, I have enough toys. I'm gonna stop buying toys.
Right.
Although I say that and I look over at the giant Godzilla figures on top of my computer. Crash Bandicoot 4 announced for multiple platforms. So great.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering how they're gonna handle that. Because it feels like because Crash Bandicoot was basically like an endless runner kind of game.
Yeah, kind of. Also,
And
there's been like 30 games in that series.
Have there been 30?
No, probably not that many, but there's been a lot.
I know they had Crash Team Racing. I know they had the 3 Crash games. Like I'm just curious.
There was
if
other
this
Crash
is gonna
platformers on PS2 and Xbox and GameCube.
Oh yeah, there weren't there? I forget about those.
Right.
Just in my head, it's the PS1 trilogy, or
Right.
that is all I think of when I think Crash Bandicoot.
Clearly, that's what they were thinking of too, since they went with 4.
Obviously,
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder if have they confirmed? Have we seen anything? If it's going to be a runner game, or
There's
is
a
it going to be
trailer
like
and stuff. I just didn't bother to watch it because I never cared for the
all
old
right
ones.
then. Sony's trailer for Spider-Man Miles Morales for PS5 was pulled from YouTube due to a copyright strike from Sony Computer Entertainment and was later reinstated. It's just Sony, you're just looking real great right now with that PS5 reveal and copyright striking your own content.
Good job, Sony. That's greatness.
Dumbasses. Bloomberg reports Nintendo pulling away from mobile game and app development, and this was cited to be due to their current successes in other arenas.
Right.
So basically, the Switch is doing well enough that they're just going to focus on that because, you know, whatever.
Specifically, they mentioned the runaway success of Animal Crossing, which I believe is now the highest selling Animal Crossing game.
I'm not shocked. It is also the best Animal Crossing game.
Nice.
Although not my favorite, but that's a different story.
I did see already some threads on the internet on various websites where people are saying that it does not have enough content, and it is criminal that Nintendo would release a product that they could run out of content on so soon. And those same people admitted that they had played for like 400 plus hours already.
Well, what's weird is that they've already announced, like, they're adding. There's new updates coming, and the newest update that they've announced is going to add swimming in, so it's a whole new mechanic in the game. Like, this is that they're adding stuff to it. But yeah, it's not light on content.
Even then,
I would dispute
400 hours for $60. That's
yeah. I don't know why you're upset.
Right, that's pretty good value.
Microsoft closing Mixer will partner with Facebook Gaming for xCloud partnership.
Gross.
Twitch app is available for streaming on Xbox One. Instructions have been provided by Microsoft to use OBS for streaming to other platforms. No option to stream to Facebook yet available. This is a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
I cannot believe they're shutting down all of... When I first read this, I thought it was saying that they're shutting down Mixer on Xbox. I was like, oh, they must be transitioning to the new generation of hardware,
Nah.
I didn't... They're shutting down Mixer entirely.
Yeah, and all those streamers that they just paid multi-million-dollar contracts to convince them to come to Mixer have now been released from those contracts and immediately went back to Twitch.
It's almost like, what's the point of having a contract when a company can just give you the middle finger?
Well, no, they released them from the contract. They gave them the money, and then they were like, never mind, you don't have to do this anymore.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Right.
That's good then.
Yeah.
Batman Arkham series developer Rocksteady is working on a Suicide Squad game. So that's good for them. The Batman Arkham games are some of the only good things to come out of DC properties in a long time.
Yeah.
And people that are fans of the movies are going to write in now. So I'm sorry to you.
Sorry to both of
people.
You. Yeah.
That's... To be fair, two of them are in our Discord and they bring up good points.
Yeah. And one of them, I think, hosts some of the shows on this network. So
there you go. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2 unveiled at New Game Plus Expo. Also, some Neo Geo Pocket games coming to Switch, and a lot of other announcements of a lot of other things. New Sheer and the Wanderer coming. Ys 9 is coming.
Yes.
Trails of Cold Steel 4 is coming.
Yeah, we already knew about some of that, though.
So good, exciting stuff. Curse of the Moon 2 is really exciting, but I'm most excited for Neo Geo Pocket Color games coming to the Switch. They're going to be $7.99 each, I believe was the number.
I believe that is
and they announced King of Fighters R2 and I think two others that I've already forgotten.
Yeah. I only got a chance to watch some of it because I was at the office while it was airing, and I caught probably 10 minutes of it or so. And the thing that caught me immediately was that the announcer person who was talking in between all the trailers is one of the main voice actors in Cold Steel. So I just kept hearing his character announcing all of this stuff. I was like, man, that guy loves Neo Geo games.
Samurai Showdown Collection coming to Switch, but we might have known that already.
I believe we did.
So lots of good Neo Geo news tucked in there. I'm excited about that. The Neo Geo Pocket Color is a great system with a great library that doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, as soon as I turned on the video, because I was a couple minutes late getting into it, it immediately played a Neo Geo startup sound. And I was like, this is going to be a good video.
Star Wars Episode 1 Racer HD ported to Switch.
Yeah.
You can play it. It's an N64 game.
I didn't like it then, so I'm probably not going to like it now.
It was one of those things where I remember, like, I didn't love it, but I was like, it's so much better than the movie that I think I enjoyed it more than I should have because of that. But, Tetris 99 holding a Xenoblade Chronicles event. So get in there and get your special skins.
I keep forgetting about all of those.
Me too, every time. I've got the original Game Boy skin or whatever, and I just turn that on. That's all I use.
Yeah, I really want to get the 8-bit Zelda skin. I just keep forgetting.
That one too. That's a good one.
I keep forgetting to turn it on to earn enough coins or tokens or whatever to get it.
Yeah. Second Darius collection, Darius Cosmic Revelation, will include G Darius HD and Darius Burst Another Chronicle EX Plus. Which is the name of a game.
Yeah, that's the arcade version of Darius Burst Another Chronicle, not the Vita or PS4 version. So supposedly it will support the like 3 widescreen monitors wide display.
Yeah.
Because
So that's
you need that on a
interesting.
Switch.
We'll see how that goes.
That'll be the largest letterboxing ever on the Switch's 5-inch screen.
TGS 2020 will be hosted online in September.
Yep.
That's
good.
exciting. I'm enjoying all of these online things
Right?
that I normally don't ever get to go to.
Seriously.
It's been nice.
Yeah.
The Messenger released on Xbox One, immediately available on Game Pass.
That's nice of them.
So that's good. Great game.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron Weber, the staffer behind the Sonic Twitter feed for the last 5 years, is stepping down from Sonic's position, or pardon me, stepping down from position as Sonic's social media manager. Will take another role within Sega.
The way that you almost phrased that, it sounded like he worked at Sonic Drive-In.
Right, where he tweets about Sonic the Hedgehog. And to be fair, his social media game has been pretty on point.
Oh, yeah.
So it's sad to see him go.
And he was one of the first like corporate social media faces that was super snarky. At least one of the first that I remember seeing. Like before I'd even heard of Wendy's, I was seeing Sonic saying dumb shit. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then finally, the Commander Keen mobile games have apparently, sadly, Saturn's very upset, been canceled.
No.
I know, you're crushed. It's okay. Maybe one day we'll get ports of the original Duke Nukem games before he went 3D instead.
Gross.
To mobile. And then you cannot play those as
Man,
well. I like Commander Keen.
That art style for the new Commander Keen mobile game that it was going to use looked just awful. It looked like some like budget off-brand mid-90s Nickelodeon nonsense.
Oh, so like regular Commander Keen?
Worse than that.
That's not possible.
Yeah. Go and look at it.
Let's get into the topic at hand this week. We're talking Satoru Iwata.
Yes.
Who you may know as a developer at HAL Laboratories, who went on to be the first president of Nintendo that wasn't in the Yamauchi family. But we will get into all of that.
And I would like to mention that we also briefly covered him on our very first episode.
We did. We started the show right after his passing.
Yes.
And so we did. This is us redoing an episode. We did cover it, and I would say poorly. And at the time, we were still kind of reeling from the whole situation. It was a big loss, and it did seem very sudden.
Yeah, and also we were still trying to figure out the format of this show, too. So.
Right. Also, we were recording on like a shared Yeti microphone. And
you mean I wasn't on a Rock Band mic at the time?
It's I don't know. You might have been. It was bad.
Yeah.
And we didn't do any research beforehand. We were just like, let's do Satoru Iwata. And then you sat down and we were like, anyway.
You remember Balloon Fight?
That was the game he did. Let's start with listener feedback. Tamchan87 says, absolute legend of a man, from single-handedly fitting the entire Kanto region of Pokemon Red and Blue into Gold and Silver and recoding the entirety of Earthbound to cutting his salary in half to keep Nintendo in the black. You hear that, Randy Pitchford, you slimy little fuck. I may not be the biggest Nintendo fanboy, but everyone from all walks of life can learn from the magnificence that was Satoru Iwata. Rest in peace, Game Center Iwata.
Nice.
Elk Neodafs, I hope I said correctly.
Good luck.
Writes in, I never really got into casino games, but once ordered a Super Nintendo from a seller on Amazon, and as a gift, the seller gave me Vegas stakes for free.
Nice.
It sat for years before I tried it out. I ended up getting completely sucked in and totally addicted, had to win my $10 million and beat the game. When I did, I was surprised to see Satoru Iwata's name scroll up the screen. If anyone could have made me love a casino game, it's Mr. Iwata.
Nice.
Rygar Starkong writes in, there never has been or will be another like Satoru Iwata. To me, he was Nintendo. You could literally feel his influence in every product the company produced during his tenure as president, and Nintendo Directs were pure joy to watch when Mr. Iwata was hosting them.
Right.
Such humor and humility in his presentations. In closing, let me say, I'm going to butcher this. Oh my God. Yiki Hyoi, which literally translates to one life, one encounter, a Japanese saying that reminds us to cherish every moment. Rest in peace, Iwata-san.
Nice.
And then finally, the Todd Barker writes in and says, I would be hard-pressed to name a single person who has had a hand in as many of the things I love as a gamer. The very first game I beat on my own was Kirby's Adventure, and adore the game to this day. From the Wii and DS platforms to the worlds of Pokemon and Kirby, that man has built so very much for us gamers. His quote, "On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer, but in my heart, I am a gamer," gets me right in the feels every time.
I was at TGS in, 05, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds right.
Something like that. I think I have it notated, but I might have skipped it.
All right.
Siren, give us some biographical information.
Born in Sapporo, Japan, and on December 6th, 1959, and as mentioned, he tragically passed July 11th, 2015 in Kyoto, Japan. So right about 5 years ago now.
So we're just going to take it in order and begin with his early life and his time at HAL Laboratories.
Yeah. He was the son of a prefectural official in Sapporo. He mentioned that he was lauded for his leadership from a young age. He became class president, student council president, president of various clubs in his school.
Future president of Nintendo in his yearbook.
Eventually. Yeah, that's what everybody wrote in there, was like, someday you'll be the president of a video game company. And he responded with, "What's that?"
That trading card company? What?
He said his first experience programming was on an HP 65 programmable calculator.
Oh, man.
He said he created games like Volleyball and Missile Attack on calculators during his high school years. I believe all of that. That sounds like something that a high school student would do.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time not programming on my calculator. Well, I did actually program on my calculator, but only to solve my math tests for me, because we were allowed to have TI-84s, and I was like, "You guys are morons. You know I can look this formula up and make a program."
Yeah, I had a TI-86, and
oh, geez,
and
you fancy,
right? They let me keep it too. Technically, they were like, "Well, everybody has these TI-82s, but that looks about the same, so whatever."
Yeah.
That was great.
Anyway.
Yeah. He said his first computer was a Commodore PET, which he purchased back in 78, the same year he began college. He says that he completely disassembled the machine to better understand it, which meant that he officially understood it better than anyone at Commodore.
It wasn't a super successful machine.
The PET did pretty well. It didn't do as well as the 64, but it still did pretty well.
Did it do? I guess it might have just not done so well in America.
It did okay in America before the 64 came out, but this was the late 70s. This was
true.
This is before anybody really bought computers.
I guess the bar for how well a computer did in the late 70s is very different from an 80s computer. That's probably
exactly
where I'm coming from.
Right. And his first job was as an unpaid intern at Commodore Japan.
Because, again, he's the only person that knew how the PET worked.
Right, yeah, he was the one. So they're like, shit, we better bring him on, but we can't afford to pay him because we're Commodore.
We were on way too much cocaine when we built it, but this kid knows how it works. We'll pay you in exposure to cocaine.
That's how Commodore worked at the time.
But then he did go on to work at HAL. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so he was invited to work at HAL as a part-time programmer in 1980. He later joined full-time in 82. But his family, specifically his father, did not approve of his career choice, and he didn't speak to his father for 6 months after joining HAL.
I remember him talking about this, and probably in one of the Iwata Asks,
I believe so,
or something. But yeah.
He was the software production coordinator at HAL, and he established HAL's relationship with Nintendo. His first commercial release was the Famicom port of Joust, the arcade game from Williams. During his time at HAL, Iwata was given multiple opportunities to show off his programming skills. He created a data compression algorithm for the NES for use in Nintendo's NES Open Tournament Golf. And he developed a method of parallax scrolling on the NES and F1 race, which everybody at the time said was completely impossible.
Right. Well, the spec sheet for the NES also says it's completely impossible.
Exactly. But yeah, if you've ever played F1 race, it looks all right. I mean, I'm not going to claim that it's like Genesis or Super NES levels, but for
it's no virtual racing.
Right, yeah. It's no virtual racing.
Running at a solid 5 FPS.
It doesn't have the VSP1 chip in it. And then in 93, HAL was facing a possible bankruptcy, and Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi offered to help finance the company's debt if they named Iwata as their president. And so he basically blackmailed them into promoting him.
Yeah.
And it worked.
That sounds like something Yamauchi would do.
Yep.
He was, this isn't an episode about Yamauchi, but he was a pretty hardcore, old school Japanese businessman.
Right. Yeah. If you were collecting hardcore, old school Japanese businessman trading cards,
almost have all of them.
His would be the most common.
Yeah. And then they would have one of him in those transition sunglasses. That would be like the rare version.
Yeah, that'd be the foil version.
With this, like a cigarette.
All the cards have cigarettes. They're old school Japanese business cards. They actually came with cigarettes in the card pack.
That's how you get packs of hardcore, old school Japanese businessman trading cards. They come attached to the bottom of ashtrays.
Right. Yeah.
That's
they come free.
Gotta make these now
with your Clax cigarettes. I don't know if you saw that. Somebody had talked about Clax in the chat the other day, and I found that they had made promotional Clax cigarettes for a trade show in Japan in 1990.
Holy shit!
Anyway, while he was at HAL, he did contribute code to a ton of games, including things like the Lolo series and the Kirby series. But he also helped Nintendo out a lot, stuff like Balloon Fight, the Mother series, the Pokemon series. And as somebody mentioned, he was credited with assisting the development of Pokemon Gold and Silver. He created the compression system that allowed that whole second world map to be in the game.
Right.
Also, Pokemon Stadium, he reportedly ported the battle code from Pokemon Red and Green to the N64 in less than a week when the project was falling behind. Also, of course, with Earthbound, he rewrote the game from scratch after the original team with Itoi's company had butchered the code so bad that the game could barely load on a Super NES. So he was known for coming in and saving projects at the last minute.
Yeah. From there, he does shift to Nintendo. In 2000, he became the head of the corporate planning division of Nintendo and gained a seat on the board of directors with the aim to reduce the length and cost of development, which should be noted in the early 2000s it was a growing concern in the game industry, where all of a sudden games were getting more and more and more expensive and continued to get more expensive to produce.
They were costing hundreds of dollars and sometimes taking 6 months to produce.
It was ridiculous. We had to hire 5 guys.
It was a different time then.
So I did just want to note that this was something that the game industry at large was dealing with.
Right.
And in addition to ballooning costs, it became a situation where then we transitioned into HD just a few short years later, which was a whole nother set of ballooning development costs. Right. Which I don't want to get too into because then it sounds like I'm just being, an apologist for the game industry gouging people, which I'm not.
Yeah.
But there was legitimate concern over how bloated and expensive and lengthy development was getting.
I mean, just looking at the transition from the N64 to the GameCube, you suddenly the polygons were much higher count, so you could see things better, and everything wasn't covered in Vaseline like it was on the N64, so textures had to actually be textures. So they couldn't just like grab a JPEG from pre-Google image search and just slap it in a game. They actually had to bring in some artists and make it look right.
Right, for sure. By the end of fiscal year 2001, Iwata's new direction at the company created a profit of $953 million and a sales of $4.4 billion. And I forgot to, I think it's dollars. 90% sure it's dollars. I think I converted that. And this was allegedly a large deciding factor in Yamauchi's decision to name Iwata his successor.
Nice.
And it's interesting that to see Nintendo dealing with a problem that the game industry is still coming to grips with in a way that is smart and useful to its consumers,
Right.
and not extremely predatory. They were a little predatory sometimes, but not extremely so.
I mean, they would still release 2 versions of every Pokemon, even if they all fit on one cartridge.
And then sometimes they'd release 2 more versions of the same Pokemon, but a little better. In May 2002, Yamauchi began. He brought Iwata into his office and started lecturing him on the challenges he faced in his 50 years at the company. And according to reports, Iwata thought he was being fired in that moment because Yamauchi just started going on about how he transitioned the company from a trading card company to this electronics giant, media entertainment company, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, Iwata became the next company's president. He was named a successor for Yamauchi.
Yeah.
And I have a quote here. A lot of this information is taken from IGN's 2012 profile on Iwata, in addition to this quote from Hiroshi Yamauchi, who says, quote, "The reason for Iwata-san's selection comes down to his knowledge and understanding of Nintendo's hardware and software."
Which makes sense.
It does, and I don't want to say that Iwata is the only instance of an engineer and a programmer becoming a company's CEO, because that would be a ridiculous statement.
Right.
But it feels like it is an exceedingly rare thing to have happen, especially in places. Japan, especially in this time 20 years ago, was a little stuffier, a little more traditional. And I imagine it might have been a little strange for Yamauchi not to name another businessman as,
Iwata never even came in a pack of cigarettes yet.
Right.
He was not the first choice.
And Iwata immediately wanted to emphasize communication between Nintendo of Japan and Nintendo of America, citing that over 70% of the company's sales came from foreign territories. And this is a big tonal shift in Nintendo, where they went from being this very Japanese focused company. And they broke out of that a little bit with N64, but not a ton.
Right.
They were still very Japan first and Japan focused, because I assume that's the market they understood.
Right.
But Iwata early on saw this need of hey, we need to understand foreign territories, and we need to understand what they want, what they need, and we need to,
we need to play it loud.
Right. We need to play it loud. So as the president of Nintendo, in 2003, at a keynote at TGS, he noted a declining interest in video games, and there was concern growing over a slump in the Japanese game market that began in the late 90s. And this is interesting to me because that's not an era that we associate in America with there being a slump in video games.
Right.
It's very much culturally it's a different thing, and I don't know if maybe some of that is because a lot of game development became Western focused in the late 90s. A lot of game development became focused on this was the beginning of the blockbuster game. This is when that started growing, and
also when more and more games were they were more cinematic. They were expecting you to have this massive television to output these huge cinematic moments on, and Japan has traditionally always had very small homes, and they value that space a little bit more. So that was when Nintendo started to shift a little more towards marketing their handhelds more in Japan, and their consoles, trying desperately to market them outside of Japan.
Right. As a result of an investigation into this slump, Nintendo actually did their own internal investigation into why is there a video game slump.
Right.
Which is weird. It's weird that they phrase it that way, I guess. I mean, normally this is the kind of thing that they would just go to shareholders and be like, "Blah," and then they'd come up with some off the wall idea. Shareholders sell pants. I don't like just whatever shit they come up with. Although you could buy Nintendo pajama pants, so they did do that.
Yeah, they did do that. They licensed it to somebody else.
As a result of this investigation into the slump, Nintendo decided, and Iwata decided, that they would begin pushing software first, not hardware.
Right.
and Nintendo underwent a major internal reorganization. Many departments were consolidated in an effort to promote collaboration within the company. And as part of these efforts, they began the User Expansion Project, which was started in 2005, that allowed employees from any department to submit ideas for new games. And while that may not be that strange of an idea from an American perspective, where a lot of video game companies and studios were very homegrown,
Right.
In the Japanese business world, that is a big change.
I just imagine like there's this one asshole in finance that keeps submitting like Mario porn over and over again.
Hey, what if we tell Capcom to make a half dozen Zelda games on the Game Boy?
Yeah, that guy.
That man's name? Miyamoto. But it really does kind of eschew the Japanese business structure. You know, it's very much at this time, and even kind of still today in some ways, the Japanese business structure. It would be out of line for you working in the fucking mailroom,
right,
to go to the president of your company and be like, "Let's make a game about farts." Like that would be.
Let's make a game that's pinball, but you play it with a microphone.
Oh, it's great! What a terrible idea. So I do find it interesting that they really were being rather progressive from a Japanese early 2000s business front.
Yeah, definitely.
To do this. And in 2004, Iwata doubled down on his position, stating that developers were wasting time focusing on core gamers.
Yeah,
which was
an
heresy
odd statement at the time.
In the early 2000s.
It's an odd statement now.
Yeah, for sure. You know, because you got to keep in mind, this is 2004. This is before the mobile game market on phones existed.
Yeah.
Because that's what saved public interest in video games, as much as we don't like it. It was phone games.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that all of a sudden everyone's grandma's playing Candy Crush is what saved it.
Yeah.
And you kind of could see where Nintendo's coming from with this shift. You know, they made increasingly, core gamer focused products for a while there.
Yeah.
The N64 and GameCube era, coming right before the DS and Wii era, feels much more like core gamer focused.
Right.
And I remember a lot of core gamers being very upset at the transition that would follow this particular statement.
Well, even then, a lot of core gamers felt left behind by the N64 and GameCube, just because of business decisions they made there, with the N64 not supporting optical discs, and then the GameCube not supporting DVD. There were a lot of people that were upset at the time and felt like these were half efforts.
The first major hardware to market under this new direction was the Nintendo DS, which was considered highly profitable and successful from early on.
It's weird. I've never heard of it.
It's it's like a Game Boy, but there's two of them duct taped together.
Oh, it's a double Game
duct
Boy.
taping two of their systems together has been a joke for a good 2 decades at Nintendo. And interestingly enough, Iwata pushed really hard for titles such as Brain Age, which he was heavily involved in.
Nice.
And they wanted to draw in new demographics that many game companies just, I would say, I wrote lost interest in, but in reality, they never had interest in these people.
That's fair.
Because it felt like this thing where they're just trying to squeeze more out of this core gamer market instead of diversifying.
I'll be honest, I was so excited to get Brain Age when it first came out. I don't know why. I just thought it was the coolest shit.
The DS has had several hardware revisions. All of them seem to sell well. The DS Lite is alone has sold close to 94 million units. That's one hardware revision.
Damn.
There's been, what is there, 5 DS revisions?
Is there?
You get DS, DS Lite, DSi, DSi XL, and wasn't there one more?
Oh, man.
No, that's it. 4.
I forgot about the
revisions.
DSi altogether.
Yeah, and you forgot about the DSi XL, Saturn. How could you?
Yeah.
So I do want to emphasize how, because I feel like a lot of people really cite the Wii as Nintendo's big appeal to a wider demographic, but the DS is where it started. There was an entire series of DS games that were noted on the box that you would use them book style with a stylus,
Right.
holding your DS sideways. It was an entire line of games.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of them.
And they really wanted to get people playing crosswords, playing Clubhouse games, playing Brain Age, people that traditionally didn't play these things. And it was reflected in their marketing for the DS. There was a lot of commercials of like celebrity. There was this one, it was like a celebrity or grandma or something, like playing a like Brain Age. I think it might have been a Brain Age commercial, like playing Brain Age on her DS and then like setting it on a doily, in America. Like just stuff like that where they're like, we want grandmas that are going to put their DSs on doilies. These are the kind of people we want playing our games.
Right.
And
because if they pick it up for Brain Age, maybe they'll try Tetris DS. And if they like Tetris DS, maybe they'll try something else. And it was a brilliant like way to get in the door.
Right. And as much as it made people like me feel disenfranchised because I wasn't really, I was a core gamer at the time. This is early 2000s. I'm like wanting RPGs and shooty gun games and that's what I want, more Halo. Like that's what I'm after. And then they're over here like, here's one that tells you how old your brain is. And I'm like, my brain's as old as the rest of my body. I already have that information. Give me, where's the new SOCOM?
I fucking loved Brain Age. Like I was 100% committed to it every single day for like a whole year. And like I was forcing friends to play it too. I was like, you do your test now. Find out how dumb you are. Do your test. And it was a thing. Like people could not come to my apartment without me being like, I
didn't know you used it to shame people, Saturn.
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant for that. Like,
oh, you're 107, you idiot.
Like I had been like daily practicing with it. So I had dropped from like late 30s back down to like right at my age in the early 20s. And then my friends would come over and be like, look at how dumb you are. Do this thing and it'll tell you how dumb you are. And they'd be like, it says I'm 70. I'm like, you're so dumb. It was great. It was the best fucking thing.
Discussion about the Wii started in 2003, and Iwata insisted from the beginning that the project be something different and new in the industry.
Right. It was the revolution.
The revolution as it was revealed.
Yeah.
Iwata allegedly challenged engineers to make the system, quote, no thicker than 3 DVD cases. The abandonment of the traditional controller in favor of the Wii remote design was meant to encourage non-gamers to be interested in the system. And in 2005, during the reveal of the Wii remote, he reiterated that games needed to be more accessible.
Yeah.
And certainly, at this point in time, Iwata was not the only person talking about accessibility in games, but it seems like they were the only public company selling accessibility in games.
Yeah, it was definitely it was weird to see somebody even trying at the time.
Yeah. And after the Wii's tremendous success, and it really was an extremely, tremendously successful system.
Ludicrously successful.
From the first instant it was on the market.
Right.
Iwata continued to push for products like Wii Fit that would serve not just as games, but as lifestyle products.
Right.
They had the heart rate monitor that everyone made fun of. Like he
that
wanted
never
this,
actually made it to market though, right?
It did not. Okay. No, it did not even make it to market. He wanted this to be a lifestyle machine. He wanted this to be the thing that was in every old person's home, and it was.
Yeah.
But this would continue to be his focus, even up to his death.
Yeah.
He really wanted to diversify and make games accessible and fun, and so that everyone could enjoy them. Certainly that vision evolved over the years.
Right.
But I think he kept that same core message.
Yeah.
After the Wii, and again, the Wii was... go listen to our Wii episode. It's nuts.
Yeah.
In 2012, the Wii U launched to poor sales, and it was a trend that would continue throughout the system's lifespan, and this would occur barely a year after the lackluster launch of the 3DS.
Yeah.
And while the 3DS actually pulled out of its slump and went on to be very successful, I do feel like a lot of people forget that the 3DS and the Wii U bombed hard at launch and were a year apart.
Yeah, and as big of a Nintendo fan as I am, both of those were hard sells even for me. Like I was hesitant on the 3DS for a while there. It wasn't until after Kid Icarus was announced that I finally went ahead and bought one.
Oh, that hand cramp simulator that sold you on it.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't played it. I only heard about it.
God, what a off that of all the games Nintendo needs to make a Switch remaster
Right?
of, fucking do that with a real control scheme.
Seriously.
Ugh.
So it took me a while to buy that. The Wii U I also dragged my feet on for a little bit. It wasn't until after you already had yours and I got to see some of the games on there that I finally caved in and went ahead and got one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was they were not really they didn't do a great job pitching either of those really.
They didn't, and it makes me wonder if the core philosophy behind them does seem tonally different than the DS and Wii.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, did they just misunderstand, or were they maybe going, hey, let's try to also scoop up some core gamers,
right,
going against their own philosophy that they had been acting on for a decade at this point?
Well, they had gotten some pushback from the industry and from the press saying that they were ignoring core gamers, and two, sales among all those non-core gamers were just plummeting because they were going to smartphones instead.
True. By 2009, the Wii was it had made its money, but nobody was buying the Wii.
Right. And the new games coming for the Wii were not really getting attention. You were getting mostly shovelware at that point.
Yeah. And certainly there was a lot of accessibility within the systems, as well as backward compatibility.
Oh, yeah.
The DS, the 3DS and the Wii U were both fully backward compatible with their original systems. So it was a misstep. I would call the launch of both of those systems a misstep for sure. And it was around this time that it was revealed that Iwata was making a modest, for the CEO and president of a global company anyway, salary compared to his contemporaries like Miyamoto. And both in 2011 and 2014, he voluntarily halved his salary by way of an apology for the company's poor performance.
Right.
And the Nintendo's sales continued to slump with net losses from 2012 through 2014 consecutively.
Right.
It was a rough time to not only work at Nintendo, but to be a Nintendo fan.
Yeah. Hey, go back and read some of those Nintendo-centric websites from that era. It's depressing.
Yeah. It is. I was working for one at the time, so it was like, oh my god, a new game!
Yeah.
Oh, it sucks too. And granted, there's some real gems on the Wii U, but man.
Oh, yeah.
In
and
2013,
he ported to Switch now.
In 2013, he did take over as CEO of Nintendo of America while continuing to be the company's global president, and he immediately decided to forego E3 press conferences and soon started working on the idea for Amiibo.
Yeah. Which for people who don't remember anymore was massive.
Oh, it was a big deal. It was like Nintendo, because they had pulled out of Space World 10 years before, or whatever, and then now they're pulling out of E3, and now it's like Nintendo's not anywhere. Where are they going to do their presentations?
Right.
In 2015, Iwata started turning his attention to the mobile game market, which is, again, in line with his original statement in 2002 or 2003 that we need to focus on software, not hardware.
Right.
And their hardware wasn't doing it for them, so they turned to the mobile game market. And they started to see some financial success with mobile games, is what I wrote. In reality, they saw insane success with their mobile game market. Super Mario Run made like $10 million in its first day. Pokemon Go is just, to this day, raking in obscene gobs of cash.
Well, granted, they don't make all the money from Pokemon Go.
True.
That's split among several people.
But when you split all the money in the world, it's still a lot of money.
It is still a lot of money.
And Iwata worked on and oversaw the development of the Nintendo Switch until the very end, and was the console's head developer. And I find it so fascinating that in his final years there, he cut his salary in half twice, which I think would put him at 25 million yen a year.
Right.
I think it was 100 million, would put 25 million, which is $770,000 in half twice. Still a good chunk of money. And he still got bonuses based on performance and things. And, I don't want to make it sound like he was living in poverty to maintain the Nintendo, like he lived pretty well. He lived like
he was doing all right.
Corporate CEO, but still, it was about the gesture.
Yeah.
But even in his final days, he was spearheading the Switch, and it does make me sad that he didn't get to see how incredibly successful the Switch has become.
Right.
Because it very much feels like it has Iwata's touches all over it.
Oh yeah.
And it's also been the device that, as we talked about, I think in the news segment of this show, or maybe last show, it is the device that has let Nintendo pull back from this mobile game market where they've been getting a lot of flack because they have had a lot of predatory practices there, because it's almost mandatory in the mobile game
It's
market.
the only way you can make money in the mobile market. People don't want to pay up front for a mobile game.
Which isn't to excuse their shitty predatory behavior there. But still, this device that let Nintendo get back to making games for everyone, which is what Iwata's vision was. It's what the Switch very much became.
Yeah.
And as we stated earlier, Iwata passed away on July 11th, 2015, at the age of 55, after battling a tumor since 2014. And even while hospitalized, he had his laptop with him and was working on providing guidance for Pokemon Go and directing where that project was going to go. Right. So even to the very end, he was hands-on.
Yeah, and I remember about a year before he passed, I think, he had one successful operation. And at the time, they were painting it as he had completely recovered and should be able to.
Early 2014, I believe, is when he had that operation.
Yeah, and then of course it was not as fully successful as they had hoped. So unfortunately, he ended up going back.
Yeah, Iwata was considered by his peers to be a genius programmer. In case you couldn't tell by his achievements early on that we talked about.
Right.
And again, he was constantly hands-on with every project he worked on.
And not just within Nintendo. A lot of the competitors also saw him as a genius. And you saw a lot of that right after he passed. You saw people from Nintendo third parties. You saw people from Sony, from Microsoft, from Sega, from other companies all coming forward to sing the praises of Iwata and to mourn his passing.
Yeah. And we didn't talk a lot about him, so I suppose we can now because it's our show and we can talk about whatever we want.
That's right.
The Nintendo Directs and the Iwata Asks appearances that he did are seen as some of the most endearing and celebrated presentations the company has ever done.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically, the Iwata Asks segments have become a wellspring of unknown video game trivia. Right. And such a hard thing to get global Japanese CEOs and presidents to do is to just sit down and have candid conversations. And I'm sure that some of it was a media persona that he curated because he had a whole PR team.
Right. But it was really neat to see when he would interview other projects that he was a fan of. And you would get this information that for some reason nobody had bothered to ask these people before.
Yeah.
And like I remember there was an interview with I don't remember who it was at Capcom. I want to say it was Shinji Mikami that he did an Iwata Asks with, and it was just all kinds of information that had not been presented previously. Also, the interview he did for Dragon Quest IX with Yoshihori and the Dragon Quest team. Was all kinds of stuff that really should have been common knowledge for decades and somehow had not ever left Enix.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even because we spend a lot of time on Wikipedia for this show, and the amount of stuff that comes from Iwata Asks segments is shocking. Yeah. And the Nintendo Direct specifically, Nintendo pulled out of E3 and everyone was like, well, shit, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
And they started doing Nintendo Directs, which were extremely endearing, extremely personable. Right. They were just charming and fun and
immediately popular.
Yeah, and you could see Iwata there in his weird combination of like awkward yet endearing,
right?
Giving these presentations, and he was very celebrated for that.
Oh yeah,
and I do feel like where Nintendo is now, where they mostly do the presentations where it's the announcer and they just show the games, is because they kind of know that
nobody can really follow up.
Yeah, no one has the kind of weird energy that he had, in a positive way. I make it sound like he's a crazy person. This very strangely engaging and personable energy that he had that even came through in presentations. It was fascinating.
Yeah. Especially now that Reggie's not there.
Yeah. Reggie, who was the the second member in the weird buddy cop duo that was Iwata and Reggie.
Yeah.
What a strange combination.
Right.
But yeah, it's Nintendo has I think they're
Reggie would be the hooch to Iwata's Turner in that scenario.
I thought one of them was a dog in Turner and Hooch.
That's correct. Hooch is the dog.
Okay, there we go. I only ever saw the Tom Hanks movie. Wasn't it a TV show too?
Yeah, it was just a Tom Hanks movie.
Was it?
Yeah.
What am I thinking of?
I have no idea.
Thinking of Starsky and Hutch, which also became a movie, but was it
decades later? Yes.
Show first. I've only seen the movie. We're off track. My point is, both in the company and in the public eye, he was very much viewed as president and CEO that understood programming and video games,
right.
and like was stated earlier, just loved games and programming and working on these things, and he continued to do it all the way to the end,
right?
Which was and still remains a rarity in this industry. And I do think that without his influence, it's possible that Nintendo never would have shifted from the slump that it was entering to the absolute boom that was the Wii, and then the mobile market, and then the Switch.
Right.
And then, there were missteps along the way. There's the Wii U, there's the 3DS launch, there's the late era Wii sales and weird hardware revisions there. But
you have to remember that during the GameCube era, we had just seen Sega just drop out of the console industry and go third party only. And there was tons. Everybody was just certain that it was any moment now Nintendo was going to do the same thing. If the GameCube continued to underperform.
And when that same sentiment cropped up when they started doing mobile game development, everyone's like, "Oh, they're going third party."
Yeah, when the Wii U started underperforming, it was the same thing. And then when the Wii came out, everybody's like, "Oh, never mind. I think they're okay." And then when the Switch came out, everybody was like, "Oh, it looks like they're doing all right now."
And maybe it's understated how big of a deal Sega dropping out was, because I feel like it's the equivalent of like if tomorrow Sony was like, "Yeah, we're not gonna make a PlayStation 5, we're done." Right. Like they were a third pillar that Microsoft kind of replaced them.
Right.
But they were, in the context of the gaming industry of the late 90s, they were as big as Nintendo and Sony.
Yeah,
certainly probably not by the end. They kind of petered out and then came back.
Prior to Sony joining in, it was a two-man race for a long time there. It was just Nintendo and Sega for many years. So to see one of those big two is drop out was really devastating at the time. And at this point, now Sega has been third party just about as long as they made consoles. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people who, especially younger people now who weren't around then, they don't realize how massive Sega was as a hardware company.
Oh yeah. So Iwata always seemed humble and eager to make products that people enjoy. At the end of the day, maybe he didn't make the most hardcore game or the most realistic game or the game that, hardcore gamers loved, but he wanted to make things that were fun and interesting. And certainly that kind of bit Nintendo in the ass sometimes where they would make something that was maybe a little too accessible. Maybe you could have made this a little more hardcore.
Right.
But I do think that messaging still
really
shows through.
Wii Fit needed more violence. Is what
That's
we're
what it needed. A zombie mini game. And there was a tremendous outpouring of tributes, really too many to name, from fans and other companies. Nintendo did pay tribute to Iwata in several games so far.
Right.
The end credits of Star Fox Zero references Iwata's passing. Yeah. Breath of the Wild has an NPC that looks like Iwata and tasks players with climbing Satori Mountain.
Right.
Modders found in early Switch firmware that you could set the system date to the date of Iwata's death and move your arms in the fashion he did during Nintendo Directs to unlock a hidden version of golf.
Yeah, which was, of course, a game he worked on.
Yeah, which has been since removed, but what a weird...
Yeah. And if I remember right, the name of the ROM in the firmware was Flog, which was just golf backwards.
Right.
It was real great job hiding it there.
It worked in Troll 2, so, you know.
Well, if it worked in Troll 2.
Nilbog is gobbling backwards. I'm sorry.
Oh,
we're right at the end of the show, and I'm derailing. An NPC in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon mentions a, quote, amazing guy that helps him get his data onto his Game Boy Color, referencing the, you know, his compression work on Pokemon Gold and Silver.
Right.
And as far as final thoughts, Iwata was extremely influential, not just within Nintendo and the direction the company took and where the company is now, because again, the Switch was his project.
Right.
He was influential in the game industry at large, and very responsible for how games and the game industry were and looked and operated and seemed to consumers.
Oh yeah.
Which sounds really vague, but the point is that I can't name a lot of other CEOs and presidents from the last 2 decades of game companies unless I'm talking about people I hate.
Yeah.
So take that for what you will. At the end of the day, regardless of his public image, he was also an extremely talented programmer that seemed eager to please and just wanted to make fun games for people.
Yeah. And left a hell of a legacy behind. When he left too.
In many ways, we're still living in the shadow of his body of work, and I don't think we're going to be transitioning out of it anytime soon, because as hands-on as he was, basically everything Nintendo had in the pipeline was heavily worked on by him. Oh yeah. I imagine that maybe in the next 2 or 3 years we'll be kind of getting out of that territory, but yeah,
and it's going to be weird.
Anyway, that's Satoru Iwata. Everything ever.
That is
about
all
him.
about him.
If you do want to read more about him, IGN's 22. I don't normally direct people to IGN because it's a horrible place. But Iwata's 2012 profile on IGN has a lot of really good information. Yes. The Iwata Asks segments are still accessible, and they're just a blast to read. Yeah. It's just him talking very candidly about video games. Something he seemed to really enjoy. Yeah. Talking about them, I mean, obviously he enjoyed video games because, you know, Nintendo.
Right, he put up with them for a while there.
And also, this is our 5-year mark, so thank you so much for listening for oh my God, 5 decades. Not decades. 5 years. 5 decades!
Don't age me that much that quickly, man. Calm down.
And when we hit our 50-year mark, I'm going to have then old man Pablo come back and grab this audio clip of young me saying this whenever we're...
whenever we're incontinent and unable to finish a sentence.
When we've done 13 episodes on Trog, because we keep forgetting we did the old one.
Have we done Trog yet?
We don't know how computers work anymore, because now they're just holograms you inject into your blood.
Hey, did we do an episode on the N64 yet?
Yeah. God damn it. So thank you so much for supporting us, for listening us. I can't even speak. Thanks for listening us 50 decades. You're welcome. Goodbye.
I like that it keeps exponentially getting longer too.
Thank you for
now we're up to 50 decades. That's 500 years.
For the past 5,000 years. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone in our Discord. The community that we've built has not just become, you know, a part of the show, but has become a very big part of both of our lives in general. Especially because
my
the
only
internet
socialization these days.
Yeah, especially because the internet at large has turned into a cesspool of morons. And we can hide out with other nice people in our Discord. So that's great.
And we're moderators, so if a jerk gets in, we can kick him out.
There you go. If they're trying to sell us some essays or something, we just kick them right out. So thank you so very much. If you do want to support the show, you can rate and review us on your podcast aggregator of choice. It does make a very big difference. You can also support us financially at patreon.com/retro warriors and get early uncut episodes. They're like 2 weeks early. You can get our spinoff show Talking Wizards. That's just bananas. And you can also, if you hit the link in the show description, which is near the timestamps that I won't stop mentioning, then you can also find Cinema Rogues, which is on our Patreon, but it's free. You don't have to be a patron to listen to it, but we'd like it if you were. You can be. We won't stop you.
Because if you do decide to be a Patreon, then you can put whatever name you want on there, and we'll read it as if it's your real name.
Anyway, here's to 50,000 more years of Retro Warriors. This is why I write stuff out. This segment is unscripted. Yeah. Okay.
In another 5 years, if we make it another 5 years, our own show will meet our own guidelines for being retro.
Stop it. Anyway, thank you so very much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us clean together.